study about the next process that is called as the microgametogenesis. That is the development of the male gametophyte. The process of development of the male gametophyte or the pollen grain can also be called as microgametogenesis. Now, the male gametophyte is represented as the pollen grain. The four microspores which are formed and present in the form of a tetrad. So each of these microspores is now going to separate by dissolution of the callose wall, and four microspores will be formed. Each one of these microspores will undergo the maturation process and they will develop the pollen grains. So let us consider one microspore. Now this is one microspore which is haploid. So there will be different types of changes which occur in the microspore. What happens is, vacuole development first takes place in the microspore, which shifts the nucleus towards a site. These vacuoles will slowly keep on increasing in size and occupy the major part of the microspore. By this time also, the nucleus will also start dividing. This is the nucleus present in the microspore, and these are the vacuoles that are present. When the nuclear division has been completely completed, at the end, the pollen grain development takes place, and you will see that these pollen grains, they have two types of cells. Since the nucleus is dividing, what we are studying is microgametogenesis. That means now gamete formation will take place in the male gametophyte, that is pollen grain. So the pollen grain which is formed is now going to actually have two cells present within it. Okay, one is called as the vegetative cell and another one is called as the generative cell. The larger cell with more dense cytoplasm is called as the vegetative cell, or it can also be called as the tube cell. And one more cell will be present. Now this cell is smaller in size, almost spindle shaped, with spindle shaped nucleus. This cell keeps floating in the cytoplasm of the vegetative cell, and the second cell is called as the generative cell. Okay, generally the vegetative cell, the tube cell, is larger in size, whereas the generative cell is floating in the cytoplasm of the vegetative cell. It is spindle shaped with spindle shaped nucleus. Okay, it is smaller in size. So let us discuss about what happens or what are the characteristics of the vegetative cell and the generative cell. When I talk about the vegetative cell, as I said, it is large in size with irregular large nucleus. Apart from that, it has dense cytoplasm with reserve food material present in it. As I said, the other name for this vegetative cell is the tube cell. Why it is called as tube cell? Because it is involved in the formation of pollen tube. And for the formation of pollen tube, there will be high amount of energy required, which will be provided by the food materials that are present in the cytoplasm of the vegetative cell. The second cell is the generative cell. As I said, the generative cell is small in size, floats in cytoplasm of the vegetative cell. Generally, it is spindle-shaped and it is the one which is mainly involved in the process of formation of the male gametes. So how the male gametes are going to be formed? Once by the process of maturation, by dehydration and maturation process, once the microspore forms the vegetative cell and the generative cell, or you can say this is the pollen grain, or you can say the male gametophyte. These generative cell now undergoes mitotic division. So when it undergoes mitotic division, what will be formed are the two male gametes when the nucleus of the generative cell is dividing. This will be the vegetative cell with its nucleus, irregularly shaped nucleus. This is the cytoplasm of the vegetative cell, and when the generative cell is dividing by mitosis, there will be two male gametes formed. Generative cell divides by mitosis. So now what these structures which are formed are nothing but the male gametes, and this complete process is called as the microgametogenesis. We will now study about what happens or what are the characteristics of the pollen grain or the male gametophyte. One more thing, these pollen grain, this stage of the pollen grain is called as the two-celled stage, where there are two cells present in a pollen grain. So it is called as a two-cell stage. 60% of the angiospermic plants release the pollen grains at this stage, whereas in 40% of the angiosperms, the generative cell will divide to form the male gametes, and hence that stage is called as the three-cell stage. Remember, 60% will release at the two-cell stage and 40% angiosperms will release it at the three-cell stage. Let us now see the structure of the pollen grain. A pollen grain wall is actually made up of two layers. The wall of pollen grain is made up of two layers. The outer layer is called as XII, whereas the inner layer is called as intine. Outer layer is XII and inner layer is intine. Now, what are the characteristics of these XII and intine? If you consider this to be the pollen grain, this outer layer is XII and this inner layer is intine. Inside will be the vegetative cell and the generative cell. Okay. Now, XII has specific characteristics. That means the outer layer or the XII is made up of a fatty substance called as sporopollenin. This sporopollenin is highly resistant in nature. It cannot be degraded by any enzyme. Till date, there has been no enzyme found or discovered which can degrade the sporopollenin. Okay, it is even resistant to high temperatures, strong acids, or alkali. And that is the reason the sporopollenin proves to be a fatty substance, or you can say a component which makes the pollen grains good fossil material. They help the pollen grains for preservation for a quite long time. So the pollen grains can also be preserved as fossils. That is because of the presence of these sporopollenin. Talking about the inner layer or the intine, it is made up of cellulose and pectin. Okay, it is not that resistant structure. Now, when you see the structure of the pollen grain, if I say that XII or is made of sporopollenin and it is a highly resistant structure, you know that once the pollen grain land on the stigma, it has to form the pollen tube. So if sporopollenin is a highly resistant structure, how can pollen tube formation take place? So if you see the structure of these pollen grain, you will see that there are certain regions where sporopollenin is absent. So that part of the XII where sporopollenin is absent is called as the germ pore. The pore or the part from where the intine layer will grow to form the pollen tube. Right? And of course, here the generative cell will also divide to form the two main gametes. So the two main gametes can directly be involved in the process of formation of the, they will enter into the pollen tube and then they can go for the process of fertilization. So that part from where the pollen tube develops is called as a germ pore. And remember, pollen tube is going to develop from the intine. Generally, it is asked in NEET exam, what is the nature of the pollen tube wall? So you need to write that it is pectocellulosic in nature, or one of the options will be given will be cellulose and pectin. So the correct answer will be cellulose and pectin. So this is about your pollen grain structure. Some other important points that you should know about the pollen grain is that pollen grains may sometimes prove to be allergens. Most of the people, they are allergic to the pollen grains. Okay, you must have observed whenever you go to some new place, you feel you immediately start sneezing, and you say that the dust allergy, right? So that dust consists of the pollen grains of certain species which act as allergens. One of the very common pollen allergen that is found in India is that of Parthenium, or it can also be called as a carrot grass. This was brought to India along with the wheat species. Apart from this, pollen grains are highly nutritive. They are highly nutritive. So, pollen tablets are available as food supplements. In Western countries, many people, they are given this pollen tablets because they are highly nutritive in nature. They are given to the athletes to increase their stamina. Apart from that, the race horses are also given these pollen tablets or supplements so that the stamina of the race horses can be increased. Now, when we talk about sporopollenin being a highly resistant structure, we should also know that it can be preserved as fossil. If there are different ways that have been developed by the scientists wherein the pollens are cryopreserved. Cryopreservation is nothing but storing the pollen grains at minus 196 degrees Celsius in liquid nitrogen. This liquid nitrogen will help the pollen grains to remain as it is for a long period of time. And during that long period of time, after the long period of time, when they are preserved, it can be used for fertilization when and whenever required. Artificial fertilization can be done with the help of these cryopreserved pollen grains, which are stored at minus 196 degrees Celsius in liquid nitrogen. One very important thing about pollen is that since they are the male gametes which are being transferred for the process of fertilization, one thing that is very important is their viability. That means once the pollens have been released from the anther, they should reach up to the stigma within a certain period of time. Okay, because these pollen grains, they will have their own shelf life. That will be their viability. So if the viability is lost, and even though the pollen grain is landing on the stigma, there will be no pollen tube formation taking place. So viability of pollen grains is very, very important. For example, if you see the viability of the pollens of wheat and rice, it will be somewhat around 13 minutes. So within 30 minutes of its dehiscence of the anther and carrying it by wind or whatever is the agent, the pollen should land on the stigma. Other families like Solanaceae, Leguminaceae, the pollen grains of these families, they have a lifespan, a viability of certain months. It depends upon the type of the flower and the type of the species that is belonging to this family. So this is all about your androecium. We have studied about the processes by which the pollen grains will be formed. We have studied about the development process of how it is developing into two cells and later on developing the male gametes. And we've also studied about the structure of anther with its economic importance and viability. Thank you.